Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host 𝙒𝙖𝙀 Iyer. Today is election day in the United States, and a lot of things are expected to change. And there's also a lot of activity in China as well as in other parts of the world. To know more about all these things, let's welcome our co-host 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar, good evening, and good morning to very early good morning to folks in the United States, and very good morning to Sriji from West Coast.
Thank you very much, sir. And let us start by looking at what is going to happen to the United States markets today. They are expected to bounce on a Republican win. Sridharji, can you tell us how things look today? Because there is a definite trend towards the Republicans taking back the House. How do things look in Senate?
Well, I think there's very positive momentum. The markets are expecting a change in what we call as the government, which effectively implies that there will be a Republican take back of the House and potential Republican take back of the Senate. That will be a very big catalyst for the markets to move forward, because we will no more be in the austerity but more moving towards economic activity, and we may also begin to see things around shale, as well as lifting the embargo on the fossil fuels. So I think the markets by and large are bracing themselves for a positive moment. The pre-markets show a slight upward tick, about 80 points on the Dow and about less than 20 points on the S&P, and we will see the trend moving forward. Just to wrap because we'll be in the midsection, I think the Senate has boiled down to 4 seats. Right now, the Republicans look like they're regaining the Senate. I think we covered this in one of the shows, which is it's boiled down to Georgia, the last 4 seats, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona. And I think they're fairly strongly positioned. And most of these seats, as we indicated before, less than 2%. As far as the House is concerned, it looks like could be for some massive win for the Republicans. All based on only one factor: economic uncertainty and mismanagement of economy.
Thank you, Sridharji. And let's take a look at China. Goldman Sachs has weighed in that China is still months away from reopening. And the numbers from the October for China shows a slackening because of global demand as well as COVID shutdowns. Sridharji, I don't know if you have been following this news. A Foxconn plant shut down, and there was a lot of this was an Apple manufacturing, iPhone 14 manufacturing plant in China. So perhaps you can wrap up together all these things as to why China is still facing headwinds.
China is facing, I call as the self-inflicted headwinds. What exactly is Emperor Xi's agenda, we don't know, but he is following much against the wishes, the sustained zero COVID policy, which is bringing a lot of grief to people. The incident that Sriji is pointing out is, which has been to some extent or to a great extent suppressed by the media, there has been subtle protests by the employees for the shutdown, reacting against why the companies are being shut down and what exactly is the reason. So this COVID remains a mystery, or there is something that we don't know that is going on within China. So that is impacting as far as the domestic employment as well as the domestic production and consumption goes. Now, obviously, supply chain issues and also some kind of subtle embargoes and other countries trying to come out of COVID, having economic contraction is resulting in lower demand for China. That is what you're seeing in the October report. So Goldman Sachs has now weighed in, and they probably have much deeper insights and saying they are months away from recovery. And what is not helping to wrap it up, we discussed extensively yesterday. Mr. Xi Jinping's new economic agenda is not about market reforms and expansion. Embedded within his reform is going deep into the Xi's policy of contrarian or controlled economic activity under his direction rather than market reform. This is what the elders have been protesting and they may continue to protest, and let us see how that takes shape.
And we might remind our viewers now that Premier or General Secretaries such as 𝙒𝙬𝙤𝙤 or 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙤, these are all PhDs from the United States universities, very established credentials, very respectable background. Even Li Keqiang, who is no longer the Premier, was a very erudite man. Right now, what the team of 7 or I don't know where their gravitas comes in, where as to how they are going to take China forward. I say that in double quote because I don't think it's going to go forward. Sridharji, US has confirmed that it has held talks with Kremlin on a nuclear threat. Sir, this dirty bomb, suddenly it has died. What's the status now on that, sir?
Well, I think that the dirty bomb was probably an unwarranted dirty interruption for whatever their plans were. So I think dirty bomb has disappeared because it looks like the nuclear plant is now cut off because of whatever is the shelling. To get back to your point, there's something that is going on which prompted the US officials, this is just today, breaking news, that to have discussions with Kremlin on nuclear deterrence. Possibly because there's no data, and I know many of the viewers are Russian sympathizers in our channel. It's possible because there's something that is going on which may prompt Russia to unveil or to move forward with it. Or it's also possible that Ukraine, in a state of desperation, may do something. So I think they have basically stated, we are covering Ukraine. We need to make sure we have dialogue open, and we're not going to have another nuclear disaster. This conversation has happened today. And some reports indicate that the Ukrainians are holding the east and then trying to push back in the Kherson region. But again, all this information is fog of smoke, and but the war continues.
And a major confrontation with China is looming once the outgoing Strategic Command Chief, Admiral Charles Richard of STRATCOM, he has been the STRATCOM chief since 2019, and he also makes the observation that China is rapidly expanding its nuclear forces. So Sridharji, so you have Russia threatening nuclear option, and now is there a subtle message from China too?
It's what we call as the toolkit, or what we call as the framework. So China has now learned, or the game has been very admirably played by both China and Russia, that if you bring the nuclear option as a table, as ultimate weapon of defense, then people come to negotiating table and you may be able to come to some kind of a resolution. So that is what the game Russia has been. Today's breaking news reveals that there's a discussion that's going on between Russia and United States, and they should have held this discussion a long time ago. But so China is now recognizing that it may be in a couple of areas, it may not be having capable deterrence or offense. So it is now flagging most of its ships with nuclear capable artillery or nuclear capable missiles, and saying that effectively United States current Navy and naval architecture is not capable of mitigating with a deterrent strategy unless it lifts its game. This truth is coming out from the US itself, the US Stratfo Command, the head. And whether US will act on it, we will know. If there is a change in the government, we will probably, when I say change in the government, I mean the House and Senate composition, then there may be more activity. Otherwise, it's silence on all fronts. Remember, we covered in DGI a couple of 3-4 days ago that US was even contemplating withdrawing the squadron from Japan.
Yes, indeed. And now let's take a look at India. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is on a 2-day trip to Russia ahead of the G20 summit on November 15th and 16th to meet his counterpart. And he will be meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Trade, Denis Montoro. As Russia becomes the top importer of oil, US says it is not planning sanctions. I think this is India For India, Russia has become the top importer, and India will benefit from the price cap on Russian oil, says US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen ahead of her trip to India. So, when is Janet Yellen coming to India?
End of the week.
Okay. So, before the G20s.
Yes, I think she's coming in preparation for the G20s. Usually has finance and economic matters as one of the top agenda items. Remember that she negotiated for that 15% or 20% corporate tax, which successfully got done through G20 global tax. So I think Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has weighed in and has stated that, please, you support the price caps. It'll benefit you because you're going to get it at a discounted price. But India may be saying, I'm already getting at a discounted price well below what you think is the discounted price is. And so this is one of the reasons why External Affairs Minister has rushed to Russia. It's also possible that they want to make sure that there is no showdown in case Mr. Vladimir Putin decides to come to Indonesia for the G20 summit. So there's a lot of maneuvering going on, and India seems to be at the epicenter. Remember, the Saudi prince will be in India and probably traveling with Modi ji to Prime Minister Modi ji to the Indonesia as well. So there's a lot of background maneuvering going on, and India is at the front and center.
And I think we have told in the past that indications are that President Biden will not meet with either Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping at the G20 meeting. So we'll have to wait and see how that changes. Because anytime you make a statement like that, the other side is going to frantically force the country that is making the statement to undo it. Your thoughts, Sridharji?
Well, I think that seems to be, that's one thing. The second thing is that, which is far more important, Sriji, we know the disaster in Alaska that happened. So the Chinese regained control of the platform and blasted the United States away, and United States could do little to do damage control. So that may be one thing. And the second thing is that I just don't know whether enough ground has been prepared for a Biden-Xi Jinping summit. Already Xi Jinping has been successful in maneuvering his way into Europe. So they may be using this as a tactic also to isolate United States. And let us see whether Biden changes his mind and decides, okay, I'm going to meet with Mr. Xi Jinping.
Well, regardless of how the House and the Senate races fall, I don't think the Senate will have a 2/3 majority to override Biden on his veto, assuming that the Republican Party starts legislating on both houses. Your thoughts, sir?
No, I think the veto part of it is gone, G. So I think that you will not see major legislative changes, but this may be, nuclear option may come in, and some of the strategic issues, the voting and the people sympathies may force. Clearly, I think they're going to address the issue of this illegal immigration, but topmost in the priority is the economics, to give benefit to the people. That's number one. Number two is they're going to probably address the energy shortage issue, which is confronting United States. So I think that may be the first two items, and and then the third is Taiwan and the issues around the security apparatus around the South China Sea and Indian Ocean before they even get down to other things, Sriji.
And India is closely monitoring the movement of Chinese intelligence gathering vessel Yuan Wang V6 in the Indian Ocean. It will not allow it to enter Indian territory. I think they are on the international seas. Sridharji, I also heard that India suspended testing on its shores in Odisha.
They have, because this temporarily halted, I would say. I don't think I would use the word suspended. They probably will defer the date. They do not want to give any coordinates to the spying vessel in terms of its launch pads and coordinates and mechanisms and so on. It's very clear this is a spying vessel. I am told that there may be attempts to intrude into this economic free zone around Andaman. And so there is not going to be any opportunity for this particular ship. And on the same topic, I think there's also been news reports that's coming to India that somehow the Sri Lankan vessels in Indian Ocean, in the high seas, were refueling some of the Chinese vessels, and that has not gone down very well. So it's obvious that India is keeping a very, very close eye on the Chinese maneuvers.
Yeah, from what I have heard, Siddharji, even in the Rajapaksha family, there are two or three fairly heavy sympathizers of China. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is the Sri Lankan government, there are at least two factions, or if not more, and there are competing interests, and these kinds of things are happening all the time. I hope somewhere they see the reason and start uniting and speaking as one voice. We have to wait and see on that. Europe news. You want to say something, sir?
No, no, no. I agree. Yeah.
In Europe, British Prime Minister is set to announce a major US gas deal after the climate summit. Jeremy Hunt to announce major tax hikes and spending cuts to curtail runaway train wreck UK economy. We have to remember that they also raised their interest rates by 75 basis points. Sridharji, isn't this like adding fuel to the fire? I mean, I thought UK was in the grips of a really bad situation right now in terms of jobs.
Well, first is, taxes is the easy fiscal tool available to address both monetary and fiscal problem. So the story is they have to raise taxes because there is revenue issues that UK is facing to balance their budget. Is number one. The second is that they have to announce to the markets, otherwise the pound is going to take another heavy beating. They're going to announce to the market that there is a fiscal reform to address the issues that UK is facing, especially around the deficits that it is confronted with. Then finally to say that they understand how to manage an economy. The Liz Truss clearly sent the opposite signal. Whether she heeded to Mr. Biden and Biden's policies, we don't know. There's a lot of rumors that came out, which is to say that Biden possibly misled Liz Truss, but they are just rumors. But having said that, this is the reason why Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, are trying to send a message that there is an austerity program that is coming in to first address the balance sheet so that the pound can be salvaged. That's the first part. Now, to your question, which is around do they need more kind of benefit and relief to the people? Yes, benefit and relief to the people is required because on the energy side, now they are, hitting against a brick wall on that. Let us see what they try and do with the so-called Biden's formula of trying to ship gas from United States. Runak has announced. I think they would be far more diligent in saying, okay, I think we have to deal with the Russians. We need energy. Otherwise, let's kind of come to a conclusion. I think that is where we'll eventually head to in the final resolution of salvaging Europe, Russia, Ukraine, and the world. I think that's where we'll go because you can't be in this confrontational and not solve the fundamental issue that people are facing at home on the threshold of a winter.
And we have still got some very critical news to cover. So here's a request to please like this video so it can go viral. Also, viewers, stay till the end. We are going to share some numbers about how much gold does India really have. We've got some data. You requested this data and we've got that data and it will surprise you. So stay tuned on that. Let's continue with Europe. Is Germany undermining the Russian efforts in combating China, notably the German chancellor? Sridharji, this person just went and visited China, and there is this agreement in place that China will take ownership in the port of Hamburg. What are the other developments in this front, sir?
Well, there's a whole business delegation that went with him. There is a fear looming even within Germany whether this business group, most of these business leaders from the Hamburg region, are going to force Olaf Scholz, the chancellor, to compromise and allow trading agenda to be back on the table, and in the process provide the gateway for the Chinese into Europe and hurt the manufacturing industry as well as the other deterrents that Europe wants to put in place with regard to China is concerned. So this is the fear. And whereas France and UK, you saw Rishi Sunak's statement on China, France, vast parts of the Central and Eastern Europe are all aligning together to say we need to have a deterrence mechanism. Otherwise, China is going to walk all over us. Whether German, especially this particular faction, will align remains to be seen. And this is where whether the government will sustain or collapse, because most of his ministers in the cabinet were against this particular visit, Sriji.
Yes, it will be interesting to see how things play out there. And the EU, in the meanwhile, has rejected US Inflation Reduction Act as anti-trade and calls for discussion. This is the first time I'm hearing about the US Inflation Reduction Act. Sridharji, how can you reduce inflation? It is a supply and demand thing.
Well, that's the bill. We talked about it. I don't want to take up too much of time on that specific topic, but basically, I think Europeans have weighed in and stated, hey, this is not an Inflation Reduction Act, it is an anti-trade act, and you are going to dump $350 billion in industries that don't exist to produce EVs and other things when we already have that capability in Europe. And so why are you putting a trade barrier, and why are you dumping $350 billion? So it's not an Inflation Reduction Act, it is an Inflation Stimulant Act as well as an anti-trade act. EU has come in with a very, very strong rebuttal from across Europe, and they say we need to go back to the table and renegotiate the trade agreement. It's very ironic and sad, somebody from across the pond, as we say in the United States, making a statement on one of the reforms, Sriji.
Absolutely, sir. And let's hope that moving forward from tomorrow, this dual fork tongue of Biden administration stops and only one language comes out of the White House. It's been so frustrating when you see that a policy statement is made one day only for it to be retracted in 180 degrees opposite view the following day. It's been a mess. I don't know why, Biden administration didn't try to fix that. It's still going on. So we have to wait and see. Let's take a look at Asia. As G20 approaches the deadline and with tensions abound, will Putin attend the summit? So this is now a different question. So they are thinking that, well, if Biden is not wanting to meet Putin, maybe Putin should just stay away. So Indonesian president is working towards avoiding any potential challenges. So Indonesia, being the host, is trying to make sure that in terms of optics, the G20 looks good. Sridharji, why would Putin want to stay away, sir? If he's there, he can make even more, I don't know what to say, stir the pot maybe?
Is he well, is the question. There's some rumors
That's true.
that he's not well. So therefore, I think that even in the some of the areas that he visited in the front line, he seems to be under cancer treatment. That's the microscopic images, and they found some radiation marks, etc. So the question maybe is health, Sriji.
And Japan plans to develop portable harbors that would let the self-defense forces deploy quickly on the country's islands in the East China Sea. Sridharji, if there is one country that is very proud of its manufacturing prowess, I would say it would be Japan. We should remember the 1968 Olympic Games, how well they conducted it, despite having many sites which are completely earthquake prone. In fact, there's an earthquake happening every day in Japan, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think the self-defense forces we have talked about, and I think we have talked about Senkaku and the Qiu Islands, and we said how Japan could become on the northern side, and on the southern side, on the down below Okinawa basin, you could have the Senkaku, which is contested both by Japan as well as China, could become the flashpoint. So you can, it's not that we were the only, we were the people who kind of said that could be the first port of call for Mr. Xi Jinping. And you can see now you have mobile islands coming up for Japan to prepare itself, because it doesn't know whether the United States is going to be with it. So it needs to support the sovereignty of the nation. So it's a very interesting development. Two interesting developments you should take away from here. One, no more economic reforms. It is Xi Jinping, Emperor Xi Jinping's centralized command control economic model. That's where China is heading to. So anybody who thinks that renminbi is what you call reserve currency as an alternate currency, you got the answer. Second, it is not going to keep quiet. It is preparing itself to create trouble right from those ring of islands that we drew and showed to you. And Japan is preparing itself. India is preparing itself. And we'll cover more as the days goes on, how rest of the nations, including Philippines and Vietnam, are preparing themselves.
Thank you, sir. And viewers, please wait for how much gold does India really have while I update you on some of the other events happening around the globe. South Africa is getting an aid to try and wean it away from coal-based energy creation. China has just handed over a port to Nigeria in Lagos for full maintenance. And thirdly, I have one other news that I would like to cover on before handing over. There are high expectations as Lula takes over as the premier of Brazil. So looks like Bolsonaro has conceded. Sridharji, quickly on this, and then we'll go to how much gold that India have.
The last one is very significant, that Lula is being viewed favorably around the world. He's a socialist, but they believe that he will move to center right rather than remain on the left. As far as the Nigerian development is very significant, China shares a very, very close relationship. They have created the platform, and this is the reason why Indian Ocean is of great significance to them. As far as South Africa is concerned, I think this whole climate agenda, and they don't want South Africa to be, boiling and using coal plants. But guess what? I don't think South Africa has an alternate choice.
And thank you, viewers, for your resounding approval of the data that was submitted yesterday about the strength of the dollar. And as part of that, we had talked about gold reserves of various countries. And now we'll update you with the data we have got about India. And let's have the slide, please. And then Sridharji can talk to that.
Yes, I think there was a lot of, thank you. There was a lot of questions around the gold. You can see that India's gold reserves have risen about 9% in a year. It has risen consistently in the last 4 years. India has been adding, but it constitutes a very small percentage of the total reserves that India has. You can see, we will see the next slide. Yes, this is very important. Take a look at US, Germany, Italy, France, the old, including Russia, the old kind of the World War II relic countries which reconstituted the whole economic model. Go back to Britain, Britain concept of using gold as a reserve. You can see United States, 68% of its reserves is in gold. Germany is 67%. Italy is 64%. This is Q2 2022 data. This is not something which is old. Q2 2022 data. So the reason why they don't want gold is gold is like a yo-yo. It was like $3,000. It's about $1,650. The currencies will be massacred. At least Richard Nixon had some kind of resolve to say, let's get gold out of the way and bring US dollar. And this is a reflection of that number. Take a look at India's position. India has got 8% of the total reserves in gold. Okay, now we go to the next chart. Okay, so if you take a look at India's numbers as at the end of Q2, we don't have the Q3 numbers. The Indian reserves is around $530 to $540 billion. It peaked around 635, 640 billion, of which the red mark indicates the gold. It is a very small percentage of the total reserves. Much of India's FX reserves is in US dollars. This is the number that we wanted to share, that it's a very small percentage. And even globally, India is only 8% of the total gold that is at least in official terms. I don't know about unofficial numbers. These are official numbers. In dollar terms, it's roughly around 45 to 46 billion dollars. So these numbers we wanted to share for those who talk about gold and what India's relative position to rest of the world is.
And what Sridhar is leaving unsaid is that this is the public gold that the Indian government has access to. There is private gold ownership in India that's probably the highest in the whole world, but that cannot be counted. That's how I read it. Sridhar ji, if you have any disagreements, please feel free to share with me, sir, or with our audience. If not, we can call it a wrap.
No, I think there is. I've heard one story. It's a story which is to say, if you add all the gold that is floating around, everywhere in India, then the amount of gold that the Indians hold is greater than all the gold put together in the world. Now, this is
That's not
I don't
true.
I don't have any data, but this is the rumor that just kinds of people float around. I believe there's only two countries in the world of this ilk. One is India, and similarly China. China has got plenty of gold, or what we call as the household gold.
Thank you very much, Sridhar ji. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. If you liked our research, feel free to donate to us using the super thanks button. Thank you very much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day and best wishes to all of you.